So hey guys, so I'm here to do a short talk today about this phenomenon that's been going on. You maybe heard of it, DevOps. It's actually not only DevOps. As I was saying in the short introduction at the beginning of the day, basically I really like patterns, ideas, templates, trends, these kinds of stuff. I'm an engineer myself, but I love architecture the most, so I see these kinds of patterns, and I saw one with this DevOps movement, which is extending, in my opinion, and I wanted to let you know what I found, and maybe you devise some way of getting prepared for it, or maybe already acting on it. So, before we get started on that, just want to let you know a little bit about myself. So, as I was saying, I at the Polytechnic University, I'm an engineer. I did development, Agile, and a lot of stuff. I like to put the software architecture up there because, as I said, it's something that really defines me. It's really what I love about our world, about the software world. I'm also a trainer, so I've done a lot in training around training. I have a diploma in that as well. I'm more than 12 years, more than 13 now, experience. I've been working since I was in faculty. On C initially, then on Java, on JavaScript. I love JavaScript. Java is dead. I'm that kind of guy. Agile all the way. So I was there working on this before Agile started coming in. But yeah, by the way, how many of you were working before Agile was a thing? Yeah. Oh, so at least a couple of you. So you remember how that was then, right? All these guys with their Agile stuff. I was one of those guys as well, very resistant to change. Took me a while to get accustomed to that. But it has its advantages, and that's why I endorse Agile. It's just not necessarily the way that we understand to do that in the corporate world nowadays. But we can have a chat about that otherwise, after this presentation if you want. DevOps is something that I've done in the last part of my corporate career. I'm not an employee of any corporation anymore, but I was doing that for about 5 or 6 years. My last 5 or 6 years, I managed the DevOps team, also a security team, so that's how Dev and security went into the mix. And then there was some technical documentation guys, so we used to make fun of our team and call us DDoS, development, documentation, and ops. So, and security, of course, that was the S at the end. Now I'm doing a lot of work here in this tech management and tech coaching part. So I'm a consultant, and the slides won't cooperate anymore. That's fine. So I'm a consultant. I have a company that I co-founded together with Julia, who's here in the room. You can chat her up also on this topic. It's called Prog Squad. We're doing training, coaching, consultancy on Agile, on technology in general, not necessarily Agile. And that's what I've been doing for the last, 7 to 8 years now. So I've worked with a lot of companies, software technology companies, most of them, working on a lot of topics. Almost always Agile comes in as a topic. And it starts to get mixed up with a lot of the rest. It's unavoidable. The software world is about software, so you come in with a methodology like Agile, it's going to get mixed up, and a lot of things will come into it from that. And that's what formed this DevOps and DevSecOps and DevSecOpsDoc phenomenon. I think there's more to add, to append to that train wreck there. So let me guide you through this phenomenon as I saw it. So, in the primordial soup of waterfall or whatever it was at the beginning, everyone was doing something. Traditional world, some guy at some point came with this breakthrough. Let's break down all the silos. What's with all these levels of management and all this separation between all of these things? Not a good idea. Let's do Scrum, or Agile things. Product owners, Scrum Master, team member, much simpler, less silos. Let's go for that. Sounds good. And a lot of people are still working there, But shortly after, came another guy who says, well, let's automate all the things. It's not enough just to be agile in our team and break down the silos. Now we have a lot of things to do because we don't have those silos, those people responsible of them anymore. So we better automate them because otherwise we won't have the capacity to work on all that stuff. And that's how the DevOps movement occurred. You know, you get your Agile team, and now you have some extra guys that were working someplace else outside of the Agile team. You know, sysadmins, DBAs, guys who were doing middleware, the guys that were actually operating the software in production. But that was not enough, you know. Once they started doing this, then someone else came around and said, well, let's secure all the things. You know, we need to build security in from the start, you know, secure coding, vulnerability scans, all of that stuff. So this wasn't enough anymore either. So we have DevSecOps. Maybe you've heard of it. It's almost a thing now. It's probably going to be called DevSecOps shortly. It's still DevOps now on the top of it, but it's going to become DevSecOps if it hasn't already for some of you. And that's where you also get in the team some of the security guys, because of course nobody had dealt with this before. And that's not enough, you know. We have to document all this stuff. So we had tech writers writing user documentation on building up that stuff. So those come into the team. And in the end, it's just this explosion of, you know, well, what the hell, just do everything. You know, whatever it is, just do it in the Agile team. And that's the phenomenon that I've been observing. And I think it's a good phenomenon because it will eventually lead us to see that Agile is not about the operations. Okay? It's not about the precise things that we do every day, the writing of the code, the writing of the test, the running of the test, the deployment in production, all of this stuff. That's just tasks. Agile is not about that. And if we approach it like that and we start, you know, making or keeping more all these separations, it's just not going to work. It's not going to scale. You know, the Agile teams will no longer be 2 pizza teams. It's going to be 20 people in the Agile team, which some already do. But still, that does not scale, okay? So long as you always have new stuff coming in, new skills required in the team, it's just not going to work with vertical scaling. That's what this is in the end, right? You just add layers on top of that thing until it becomes some huge behemoth which cannot possibly be agile. So how else could we approach this issue? Well, sometimes serves us very well to go back to the roots of what we were trying to do here. So we went down this path. We see all of these things that we weren't seeing before. We see that it's good to have them together now that we've broken down the silos, yet we still keep a separation there in the team. You know, you have the team member there in the Agile definition, but in each Agile team that I went to, you always see, no, that's the dev guy, not the QA guy. If you want to talk about tests, talk to the QA guy, you know. Or there's the DevOps guy in the team as well. He's somewhere over there working on Jenkins. I don't know, that kind of stuff. You want to talk about security? I don't know, look for the guy who knows security. We still have those roles. We haven't really broken down the silo. We just hid them inside the team, right? And that's not what was intended. You know, that's not the point. You know, it's usually how people, when these kind of mainstream ideas like Agile come in and they sound so good and they're nice for some people and start implementing them and they start rolling out, and then the rest of the companies feel, you know, compelled to implement it as well because those other guys are getting ahead of them. Right? So we have to keep our competitive advantage. We have to be agile. The first thing they do is they fill up all the walls with posters about Agile, how Agile we are, how Agile things are done in here. But when you go back to the teams, it's still the same thing. So whenever I talk about this idea with any devs or ops or QAs or whoever in the teams there, they always say, but how could I possibly do all of this stuff? I mean, I can't know all of these things. I can't know development and QA and security and operations. And I mean, my brain can only compile so much. I can't know all of this stuff. So the question I'm asking there is, why do you have to know all of that stuff to be able to be responsible for it? That's why you have a team. I mean, the concept of the team is that, you know, the sum of the team members should be more than the sum of each individual. You know, there's some symbiosis there that should go on, something more that gets produced because you are a team, because you work as a team, because you put all your knowledge on the table. So what I'm saying, and I'm telling everyone, and I hope this speaks to you, you don't have to know, you don't have to master all of these areas in order to be responsible for them, in order to feel okay being responsible for them. Okay, you can do it. You don't have to know all of this stuff. Of course, you'll know one part better than the other, but it's no excuse to ignore the other because you're already good at this one. Okay? As long as you're in the software world, you will know and you can know, you have the knowledge to understand everything about development, everything about QA, everything about security, everything about operation. It's not like totally different world. We're not teaching you chemistry here, you know. It's the same thing, it's still software. So you have all the capacities there to understand and to work with it and to be able to contribute. Of course, maybe you won't be the sharpest tool in the shed when it comes to operations. Some other colleague will be, but that doesn't mean you can't do any operations tasks. Because otherwise, all of this agile thing, it just sums down to, you know, small, very small corporations, very small silos, but still silos. Whereas all of us being able to actually share this workload, whatever it is, whether it's something about security operations or whatnot, that's when a team gets built. You know, it's a sum of individuals that can work, each one of them or on any of the tasks, and that scales. You know, that's what we do for scaling distributed applications. We have the same service instance multiplied in an infinite number of ways, but it never works when you have multiple ones and you try to scale. It just doesn't go vertically, it only goes horizontally. And it is possible, so I really encourage you to think about it, because there is actually, when you come to think of it, there is absolutely no reason why you wouldn't be able to do any of the other colleagues' tasks. Okay, it's going to take some learning, you still have to do it anyways. But there is no reason that you couldn't do it. You know, it's just a mental blockage that comes from the previous way of working, where everything was separated. I mean, I only want to be responsible for this. The rest of the stuff, it's that other guy. And I ended up here with this this idea while looking at where this came from. And Agile came from Lean, basically, right? So it was all the guys in the 80s. I tell everyone, you know, everything about software was invented in the 80s, starting with microservices and stuff that we haven't yet invented yet, but were invented back then. Agile was also from back then. It's Lean. It's all Lean all the way, all right? It's nothing new under the sun. Deming did this with Toyota just after World War II. That's when it happened. So if we just go back to the core of what this means, the core of the Agile principles and everything we're trying to apply from this mentality and philosophy, and in the end also a methodology in the software world, it comes back to these three ways. That's how they were called. Gene Kim made this adaptation to development. You can look him up. He wrote a very nice book, The Phoenix Project, which I encourage all of you to read. You're going to have a laugh and probably identify a lot of the issues you already have in your company over there in that book. And he looked at, he goes back to this as well, to Deming and the initial gods of the Lean movement. And in the end, it's about these three ways. So it's a good starting point for you to think about Agile. If you just remember this, you know, anyone who asks about what Agile is, this is what Agile is. It's these three ways, so principles. The first one is flow. Okay, so from the beginning to the end of the process, we want to encourage unidirectional speed, you know, as fast as you can get from the idea to the end result, right? And in there, you have a lot of tools coming from Lean that speak to identifying constraints, to working. So let me give you an example, because it speaks more than philosophy, let's say. So you're working in a process, okay? Everybody's working in a process, whether we want to admit it or not. Self-organizing or not is still a process of a way of working. I saw it was depicted before. Right? So you have some stages that work goes through. And the theory of constraints is about identifying the bottlenecks. You know, what's the bottleneck in that process? Because any improvement that you do, no matter how continuously improving you are, if you don't do an improvement in the bottleneck, you're not changing anything. Right? You're just stacking up work, is what you're doing. You're making tests more efficient, but you can, if the bottleneck is in deployment, you're just going to get more stuff on the table for the operations part to do, and nothing will speed up. It's going to be the absolute same speed. Or if you have, and I had in my team one of these examples, so if you can think of that guy in your team that is always required to do some particular tasks, you know, he's the go-to guy, you know, nobody knows how to do something, if someone doesn't know how to do something, they go to that guy. That's the bottleneck. You need to improve there, right? Someone needs to pick up some slack there or have that guy do knowledge transfer. So you need to think about where to do the improvement. It's not enough to just continuously improve. You have to target something. You have to have a purpose. It's not just about improvement, it's about improving where it actually brings value. The other one is feedback. Of course, everyone's heard about feedback. And the important part about feedback is getting feedback from those who actually have valuable feedback to offer. And I've seen so many teams that are totally have nothing to do with their customers, with the end users, with the guys that actually have some feedback to provide. And maybe many of you are in that situation as well. But there is feedback in there, okay? You just need to go out and get it. Just don't expect it to come to you, right? And I have yet to meet anyone in any team that I've worked with who has asked, well, what are the customers saying about this, and got no reply or said, that's not your problem. You just don't ask. Okay? Just go out and ask for it. You have to want that feedback. You have to realize that without that feedback, you cannot improve the flow because you won't know where the problems are, where the constraints are. You won't be able to identify the bottlenecks and improve where you need to improve. You're just going to be a random experimentation leading nowhere. And the continuous improvement only comes once you've mastered these first two ways. Right? You can afford to experiment and learn and fail and all that stuff when you already know you have a very optimal process. You have the feedback to know exactly when an issue occurs, how you can fix it and identify it. So when you know that whatever problem you may generate through experimentation, you already know how to fix it in a very optimal way. That's how security comes in. It's not just about, I'm going to trust you, team, that you're doing the right thing, and whatever you fail, it's fine. Nobody's going to kill you, you know. It's okay. Just go out and experiment, play around. It doesn't work that way. Right? If you will fail at something and you won't be able to fix it, you're going to get a very bad day. Right? So it's not just about, you know, the titles. It's not just about continuous improvement. You do that in a responsible way when you know that whatever you're going to do, you know how to fix it, and you're going to do it in top time because you have all of the things already figured out. That's when you go out and experiment. So the idea is that most of what Agile is comes from this, and well, a lot of other stuff around Lean that you can read about, but that goes down or drills down back to this. And if you just take this and go to your team and start to apply things based on this concept, you're going to do just fine without doing Scrum, without doing whatever methodology already exists out there. I like to think of those just as stepping stones towards becoming Agile. If there's this thing called Agile, no, you don't know anything about it, don't know where to start, well, just do Scrum, you know, it's easy. It's already written down, you just do the retrospectives, the dailies, the whatever. But that's just, you know, that's the training program. It should say on the label, don't do this in production. You know, it's just training. In production, you do stuff like this, because otherwise you won't be prepared. You can't be prepared with I don't know how many pages a Scrum manual has for any kind of thing that can happen in your specific project, in your specific context, in production. You just can't. You have to be able to adapt. You have to be able to, it's a living way of working, which is why it can't be written down in a 1500 manual page document, right? It's about embedding these ways into everyone's way of thinking, so that whatever happens, you feel safe and you know you're safe. All right, so that was it for now.